All the Royal Knights have finally assembled, taking the game by storm with the most epic way to win. Digimon fans, welcome back, and today we'll be showcasing the brand new Royal Knights Yggdrasil deck. This is incredibly exciting as we finally get to play the full-on Royal Knights deck within the Digimon card game. The style of this particular archetype is Mega Zoo based, meaning the whole idea is to hard play your Royal Knights one at a time. It may seem very steep at first as you have to pay a ton of memory, but don't worry, with Yggdrasil here, you can reduce the play cost of all of them. By summoning each Royal Knight one at a time, you can eventually go for the final explosive play with Digimon to finish your opponents, and there's absolutely nothing they can do to stop you. Like always, I'll be teaching you guys how to play the deck and show you all the combos that you need to know, and we got lots to go through today with this in-depth guide, so let's begin with the deck profile right away. Alright, let's get started with the Digi-Egg card right here with 4 copies of Yggdrasil 7d6. I'm not sure why they changed the name from Yggdrasil to Yggdrasil, but this card is basically the entire core of the whole deck and how it entirely runs and how it plays. It does a lot of things with this Digi-Egg card, super unique, which I am a huge fan of the entire idea. Now, it has a bunch of breeding effects. Basically, what it means is that its effects are basically activating and constantly active while being in the breeding area. So first and foremost, your turn, none of your Digimon can Digivolve. So basically, it stops you from Digivolving. This is a Mega Zoo type-based type of deck. It helps you reduce its play cost with its secondary effect. Once per turn, when a Royal Knight trait Digimon card would be played, you may reduce the play cost by 4, and then reduce it further by 1 for every Digivolution sources underneath this Digimon card. Now keep in mind, this card will always forever be in breeding. It cannot come out into the battle area whatsoever. Now it has a third effect, breeding. Start your main phase, reveal the top card of your Digi-Egg deck and place that card and all of your other Royal Knights Digimon in your battle area to this bottom's Digivolution sources. So it sucks up basically every time a Royal Knight is on the board, it will basically bring it back in, and it continues to build the stack that way so you can further reduce costs even more the later the game goes. It has a inheritable specifically for the breeding area as well. Your turn once returned, when an option card with Royal Knight traits is placed in the battle area, you get to gain 1 memories. And this inheritable effect is going to particularly have a lot of specific synergy with an option card, which we'll showcase and talk about later on. But that's it with your Digi-Egg card. Yggdrasil with no level, fantastic, main core boss, I guess, of the deck. I'm super excited to be making a bunch of other new BT13 decks, and if you guys want to see all the upcoming videos, then be sure to subscribe, turn on that notification bell right now to stay tuned. I actually already also posted a bunch of BT13 deck lists on the Avault Club membership tab, so if you want to see them right away, join the Avault Club right now by clicking on the join button or in the link in the description box down below. Also give this video a like while you're at it, and I greatly appreciate the support from all of you. So let's begin with our rookie types of stuff. First and foremost, we actually play 2 copies of Systemon Blanc from the Jesmon starter deck. It's just very simple. On play, you get to trash 1 card from your hand to draw 2 cards. You need to cycle pieces. You need to have lower end rookies like these cards to really help you find pieces that you need. It does give you decoy for red and black Digimon as long as you have Royal Knights, which is kind of nice. It does come in handy every now and then, but not so often. But yeah, mainly we're playing it for the draw power for cycling cards. Then we have Systemon Xiao from also Jesmon starter deck ST12. This one on play searches top 3 cards of your deck, adding yourself 1 Royal Knight specifically or Huckmon, and then you get to trash the rest. Trashing the rest can help you give some really good setups as well for later gameplay with some synergy and combos, and all turns it gives all your Royal Knights reboot, and it's kind of nice to have every now and then as well, but not super necessarily because again, we play it for the searching and so on. Then we got this new Digimon card from BT13 as well. It's called Omegamon. I guess it's like a chibi version of Omegamon supposedly that is official. It has a on-play cost of 4, but now with its on-play effect, you get to instantly just draw 1 card from your deck, and it has undulation. You place a card with Royal Knight traits from your hand to the bottom of your Yggdrasil in the breeding area, so you can tuck more stuff in, so potentially reduce more play costs essentially with this guy right here. Then to round off for all the generic Digimon that we're sort of playing for the deck is that we will play 1 copy of the Porcupamon. It is a level 4 cost to hard play. We're generally going to be hard playing stuff all the time. We can't Digivolve anyways. So on play and on deletion, it deletes one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon. This deck is severely weak to Floodgate rookies, especially Psychmon, Solomon, and Chikurimon, those that prevent you from reducing play costs. So you have to get rid of them. Therefore, this is why I play one copy of it, and there's going to be more ways to remove them, which we'll talk about more later on. It's inheritable, doesn't apply to this deck whatsoever. So yeah, one copy is all we need. Okay, now into the good and cool stuff. Let's start talking about our Royal Knights, and let's begin with Magnamon right here. Now, I initially played 4 copies of this card, thinking that it has a lot of synergy in terms of like giving you more draw power, establishing a blocker early on is really nice. But over time, I realized once you play the first or second one, later the game goes, you don't really want to be playing it again. You don't really get the chance to play it as often anymore. However, if you guys still feel like 4 is really mandatory, then go for the 4. But I just feel like after so many play testing, 3 just works out nicely for me. Now, for 7 hard play costs, this is going to be the cheapest Royal Knight you can hard play. It is a level 4, it has blocker, and then it has a secondary effect of all turns. When this Digimon would leave the battle area, you get to draw one and play a Vmon. Now, keep in mind for this specifically first part of this effect is that if it gets sucked in from Yggdrasil during the breeding phase, then you get to still draw a card, which gives you the value that you need. However, you don't get to play a Vmon because you don't play any of that in this particular deck. So yeah, a very good early game card that you definitely want to be seeing for sure in this particular deck as soon as possible. Then moving on next, another early game card you definitely want to be seeing as soon as possible would be your Dynasmon right here. Dynasmon is your main searcher. It is the next cheapest Royal Knight with a 10 play cost. So eventually you can be playing this for much lower cost in the early stages of the game, and with its on-play effect, it gets to reveal the top 4 cards of your deck, adding 2 cards with Lucemon in their names or Royal Knights in their traits, and then you trash the rest. Getting 2 hits is very effective, so you can find your pieces and gather your combos and decide on how you want to be playing your strategy throughout the entire stage of the game. Now, it has a secondary effect of your turn. When you play another Digimon with Lucemon in its name or Royal Knights in its traits, you get to delete all your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon, so board wipe them. Really, really powerful effect as well. That comes in handy in the late game sometimes every now and then. Then, since we talked about Dynasmon, we do have to talk about Dynasmon's partner, where we have Lord Nightmon right here. It also has the on-play effect, which lets you return one Lucemon or Royal Knight trait card from your trash back to your hand. So if you ever trash cards in the early stages of the game, or if you lose a security and you find a tech piece or a tech choice or whatever you need to grab resource specifically, this is the great card to have. Then it has a secondary effect which is super good for defensive capabilities, because it's opponent's turn. Once per turn, when opponent's Digimon attacks, you gain a memory for each Digimon with Royal Knights in its traits, including itself. So the more Royal Knights you have potentially, you can actually stop your opponents to sort of like attack you and make aggressive swings. It's great for like defensive early game purposes and stalling out the game, but also stronger it gets the late game, because the more Royal Knights you have later on, your opponent's going to be paying a ton of memory just for one singular attack, and it's basically Ice Ball on legs with this guy right here. Next, we're going to talk about Leopardmon, also another card that's also really, really good, and some of you guys might be playing 4 copies of. And the whole reason why you want to play 4 or at least 3 copies, in my opinion, is because it lets you play more things with reduced cost, and it gives you blocker capabilities, which is just super crucial, again, that you have to have some defensive strategies in the early stages of the game. Now, it's when Digivolving main effect, and once per turn, you get to play 1 green or Royal Knight Digimon card from your hand for the cost, and when you do, you get to reduce the cost by 4. And all turns when you play another Digimon, all of your green and or Royal Knights Digimon gain blocker for the turn. It doesn't necessarily have to be played via this effect, but it synergizes very nice with the first effect as well. So if you ever hard play stuff by paying the memory anyways, all your stuff gets blockers, so you definitely want to be timing it very crucially alongside with your combos to making sure that you have wide board coverage on all your blockers with this particular card. Then moving on next with more playing stuff, we have 3 copies of Gankumon right here. Gankumon is a 13k blocker, which is actually really strong, great for, again, early game defensive capabilities. It has the on-play effect, which lets you play 1 Digimon with Sistermon from your trash for free, or you can play 1 Digimon card with Royal Knights and its traits from the Digivolution cards of one of your Digimon that is in the breeding area, essentially meaning that you can play something off from underneath Yggdrasil with this effect. However, you cannot play an Omnimon or a Gankumon with it. Now, by doing so, you get to utilize the on-play effects of the Digimon that you play via that effect. Therefore, this card is just then really good and gives you a lot of value, so that you can, utilize more effects for free. And yeah, just a really good card that you do definitely want to be seeing, especially in the mid game as well as in the late game. Then, since we talked about Gankumon, we of course must have to talk about, its disciple, as the master right here with Genku, and then we have its apprentice Jesmon. This one we talked about already in our Jesmon deck profile prior. With its on play, it lets you basically delete stuff up to 6k, and the more things you have on board, you get to add more extra 2000 DP to pop even wider boards, which is actually fantastic. All turns you do gain extra 1000 DP for every other Digimon with Sistermon and Royal Knights in its traits, which is kind of nice, but otherwise you don't really need to see this all the time just because it's just a great spot removal every now and then. It obviously gets more explosive in the later stages when you go for your big final combo as well. Therefore 2 copies is really all you need for this particular guy. Then we have the leader to talk about. Alphamon, the leader of the Royal Knights, and this card is also just really crucial. I have been debating switching between 2 to 3 copies with this guy, but generally I think 3 is a very good standard to always have, just because of its on play when Digivolving effect. It places one Digimon card with X antibody or Royal Knight traits from your trash underneath it to prevent all your opponent's Digimon with play cost 10 or higher from attacking any players for the whole turn. It can give you the protection, it can stop basically big stacks from coming in and going for crazy combos and stuff like that, which is actually really important and really nice to help you set up the defenses, especially when it comes to the mid-game stages of the game. Now, it has a secondary effect of all turns once a turn when this Digimon would leave the battle area by returning one of its sources underneath this Digimon's Digivolution cards back to the bottom of your deck. You basically prevent it from leaving play. This is one of the really cool key cards that you can actually protect it from being sucked in by Yggdrasil by 1 turn. And by doing so, you have an extra body on the board, so you can do an extra check and be a little bit more aggressive with your offensive side of things, which gives you both defense and offensive capabilities. And this is why this card is also just super good. And yeah, absolutely amazing card I absolutely love, because Alphamon is definitely one of my favorites. Speaking of defense, I think Craniamon is also a really good tech addition. I'm currently just playing 1 copy. Some of you guys might want to play 2, so it's really based on your personal preference. It is a blocker. It has on play when Digivolving effect until the end of your opponent's turn. This Digimon isn't affected by the effects of your opponent's Digimon, so it gives you, sort of like effect protection type of thing. End of opponent's turn, you choose one of your opponent's Digimon, and your opponent must attack with that chosen Digimon. Keep in mind that you still have to fulfill the regular normal attacking requirements in order to fulfill it. So you have to pick a Digimon that can actually validly make an attack. You can't just make a Digimon that your opponent just played for that turn to make an attack because it doesn't have rush or anything like that. So keep in mind with that. But then you can immediately disrupt it and block it. 13k blocker, definitely really strong with Craniamon. So yeah, very disruptive card and defensive card. That's really nice. Then for more sort of defensive and disrupting and sort of almost like control style type of things, we have Examon right here. The brand new Examon can DNA Digivolve, but we're not going to be doing that at all in this particular deck. It has that on play effect, suspending one of your opponent's Digimon, and that Digimon doesn't unsuspend during your opponent's unsuspend phase, so you can sort of stall for 1 extra turn. It also has a all turns once per turn effect. When an opponent's Digimon becomes suspended, you get to activate one of the following effects below. You either suspend one of your other opponent's Digimon again, or you can unsuspend one of your own Digimon. So it's kind of really good where you can suspend 2 things when it's on play, which is nice, or during your opponent's turn when they try to have like extra bodies to attack. When they attack with one per se, you get to suspend one another. And also this guy's a 14k Digimon right there, which you usually want to be playing it via an effect rather than actually reducing its cost, because 14 is quite a lot to try to reduce. But yeah, it definitely comes in clutch every now and then for sure. Then for more control stuff, we have Kentorusmon here. The new Kentorusmon from BT13 also has the on play when Digivolving effect. If there are 6 or fewer security cards in both players' security stack in total, you immediately get to gain 3 memory. And you get to reveal 1 card from your hand, and if it's yellow, you get to place it to the top of your security stack face down. If it's not, you keep it back in your hand. And then it has a secondary effect of when attacking once per turn by trashing the top card of your security stack, you get to unsuspend this Digimon and minus 7k to one of your opponent's body. And then basically this card is just really good for, again, both control and offensive applications, which I really like. Just being able to potentially make 2 swings is definitely what I like to go for. I like the aggressive approach overall, and being able to minus 7k, potentially you can swing over stuff and even get rid of stuff of your opponent's Digimon is actually very nice there, right here. Then moving on, we still got a lot of Royal Knights to talk about. We got 2 copies of the new All Force right here. Now, it has a much lower play cost as well, like very similarly to the other guys with 11 only. It has the on-play when Digivolving effect for each of your Digimon with Royal Knights in their traits, and each of your blue Tamers, you get to trash top 2 Digivolution cards of one of your opponent's Digimon. And then afterwards, it has a secondary effect where your turn once per turn, when you play a Digimon with Royal Knight traits or Blue Tamer, you get to return one of your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution cards back to their hand. So this one is more ideal for the late game combo, which I'll talk about and showcase more to you guys. But yeah, having the bouncing effect, helps you sort of have a tech answer against certain decks, which have like certain protections and whatnot, or play around it, especially when it comes down to facing against purple decks, which is definitely really nice. And yeah, so 2 copies is really all you need here. Then as we finally start to move on to the cooler stuff, we definitely have 3 copies of the BT13 Gallantmon right here. And Gallantmon is just a super powerhouse for the entire deck. First and foremost, it's 13k DP, which is really strong. And when you play this Digimon card from your hand, if you have no Digimon on the board, you get to reduce the cost for 2 for every 5 total cards in the whole player's trashes, including yourself and your opponent. So you can potentially even play this card for 1 cost in a later game if it gets super late, and if you face against any purple decks that have a lot of cards in trash, you almost even get to play this guy for free. And immediately, it has Rush. It has an on-play when Digivolving and when attacking effect, which is not once per turn. It deletes one of your opponent's Digimon with 6,000 DP or less. If you don't delete anything, you get to delete a 13k or more. So anything in between, you don't really get to delete, but you get to rush and swing and make attacks. Really good combo synergy, again, when especially card that you want to keep in your hand, for sure when you do play it as well. Then, for another Gallantmon I want to talk about the BT12 one, and I love this so much as a tech in this particular deck. Now, it has first of all Raid, and it has a when Digivolving effect. Delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 6,000 DP or less, but you will never ever get its when Digivolving effect, but you can get its when attacking effect. It deletes one of your opponent's Digimon with 6,000 DP or less, and if you don't delete anything, you trash the top card of your opponent's security stack. Really clutch, nice tech card to have every now and then, especially in the mid-game stages when you can play it for free. You can essentially make it attack and, control the board and do a whole lot of removal stuff. Just a very versatile card to have, and I absolutely love it 100% in this build as well. I would actually try to run more if I could, but there's way too many Gallantmons that are too important, and I don't want to overflow the deck with too many Gallantmons because of the same names. Can be very disruptive. But now, let's move into the final Royal Knight, the one to end it all, and I guess so-called the one to rule it all as well type of thing. We have Omnimon for 14 play cost, 14k DP. You can Digivolve it, but never Digivolving it in this particular deck. It has on play when Digivolving effect. Delete one of your opponent's Digimon. Anything with no caveats, no requirements whatsoever. Or you get to play 1 each Digimon card with Royal Knights and its traits with different names from the Digivolution cards of your Digimon in the breeding area without paying the memory cost. Now, when you do play a Digimon via this effect, you trash the Digimon as well in the breeding area. Kind of confusing, but I'll explain exactly how it works. But all the other Digimon that you play gain Rush. So that means is that all the sources you racked up underneath Yggdrasil, you get to play all the Royal Knights from different, as long as they have different names, and everything else is basically trash, including alongside with Yggdrasil. So you guys can see this is like the final ending epic combo where Omnimon comes and calls out all the Royal Knights all together for the big rush swing, so you can swing in with a huge barrage of attacks and go for a game, which I'll show you guys later on in the combo segment later on. Alright, so that's it for all of our Digimon. Now let's move in and talk about all of the rest of the other cards, where we start off with our Tamers here. We play 3 copies of Marcus Damon. Like I mentioned before, Floodgate Rookies, especially the ones that prevent you from reducing any hard play cost, is a super hard counter to this deck. Therefore, I want to get those cards out of the way as soon as possible, and I need to consistently see cards that can remove them as much as possible and as quickly as possible, which is therefore I play 3 copies of Marcus Damon. And the other thing is that is also your main memory tamer of the deck, so then you can start at 3, which is definitely really nice, so you don't get choked out by your opponent. Therefore, yeah, again, I definitely need to see it as often as I can. And then to round off for the rest of the deck, moving into our options, which we only play 1 kind of option right here. We'll play 4 copies of the Royal Knights of the Purge. For 6 memory right here, you get to draw 1 card immediately, and then you get to slide a Royal Knight card underneath your Yggdrasil in your breeding area afterwards, and then place it in the battle area. It has a main delay effect where it lets you play a Royal Knight Digimon card from the Digivolution sources of one of your Digimon, being your Yggdrasil, for free without paying any cost, and it gains Rush for the turn. Now, however, 1 caveat is that you don't gain any on-play effects. Therefore, you want to be playing stuff that actually gives you when attacking effects instead with this particular card, and it's just a really good mid-game card to always have to help you sustain. And this is the whole reason why you have to play 4 copies of, and even though this option card does cost 6 memory, the reason why you play the Yggdrasils and the 4 copies of is as you stack up the Digivolution sources, you get to gain 3 memory back, essentially making this particular option card, which is Royal Knight in its traits, 3 cost only. Therefore, you have to play 4 copies of this card again, and you definitely want to see it as often as you can too. That's it for the 50 card main deck. Now let's talk about other tech cards that you guys can be including to spice up your deck after all. First and foremost, we have the BT6 Alphamon, bringing it back all the way from the older set, which I really like. It has a security effect at the end of the battle, and add this card to your hand. Then if you have a Digimon with Royal Knights or X antibody traits that is in play on either player's side of the board, up to 12 of your opponent's Digimon can't attack players for the turn. So again, a very good defensive card with what Alphamon does best, stopping your opponents from attacking right there. It also has the when attacking, you get to pay 5 memory to gain additional DP, but you don't really need to, because actually we want to utilize it with its end of attack last effect to gain 2 memory after the attack. So we don't really, you can pay memory if you really want to have it survive, but it doesn't really matter because we're always just having nice to have this extra body to be like a security defensive bomb, but also at the same time just gaining memory when we attack, especially when we play it with the Royal Knights of the Purge. Then we have Examon from EX3. I would actually argue that this might be the slightly better Examon to play in the deck, just because I like to have the offensive applications in here. It has a 15 cost though and 50,000 DP, which is again the reason why you actually play this card via the effect of Royal Knights of the Purge with its delay instead. Now ignore all the DNA stuff and the when Digivolving stuff. You don't really get to do all that anyways, but it has a all turns once per turn effect, which is going to be really nice because when this Digimon becomes suspended, unsuspend it and suspend one of your opponent's Digimon. So really cool. Because if you do play it during your turn, you can go aggressive and make basically 2 checks, or you can suspend one of your opponent's Digimon after the first attack and then attack over their Digimon as well. And then if their opponent comes back to their turn and they try to attack you, you get to unsuspend this guy as well and then suspend one of your opponent's Digimon, which actually I see a lot more value compared to the other one. The new one from BT13 is a little bit more versatile, but I just generally like how straightforward this one is, and it's just actually just a really strong card. So I might even actually swap it out later on based on my personal preference there, but just another suggestion. Moving on, next we got some really cool package right here where we have Jesmon GX and Seiken Mappa, which is like sort of its signature move to combo and synergize with the entire Jesmon GX card. Now I see a lot of people play 2 to 3 copies of both of these each cards right there, and therefore there's actually quite a lot of cards you need to take out if you want to include this package. If you can get this out mid and early game and whatnot, you can do a lot of aggressive win condition checks with this particular guy without even the need of having to go into your Omnimon combo. It sets you up for a lot of aggression, which is super strong. And then with its signature option card, Seiken Mappa, while you have a Digimon with Royal Knights traits in play, you get to use it without meeting any color requirements. What it main does is unsuspends one of your Digimon, then if that Digimon is Jesmon GX, you get to activate its when Digivolving effects. And one of the most crucial things why this option is actually ultra value is because it's 3 costs and it actually has Royal Knights in its traits, meaning if you play it with Yggdrasil's Inheritable, you almost effectively get to play this card for free, which makes it super powerful, hyper aggressive. Like I mentioned, it can help you finish games even earlier than you think, and it gives you a lot of versatility to make awesome, cool plays. Moving on, next we got some other cool package stuff to mention. I actually want to talk about X antibody option in particular. Now you guys might be thinking and wondering, why play this card in this deck? And here are some 2 really cool cards that you can combo and synergize to play alongside with it. First would be Magnamon X antibody, and then one of my favorites, Omnimon X antibody. Now you guys might be wondering, what are you doing? You can't digivolve your cards because you have Yggdrasil. Now there's actually a few ways you can think about this. Now with Magnamon X, you can never really beat digivolving it. Now the thing is, if you go with the final combo with Omnimon, you delete your Yggdrasil, you can actually then digivolve now because you're free from that, so all your Royal Knights can actually potentially just go and into these guys. But the other thing is that you can actually combo it with the Royal Knights of the Purge to have this slide underneath your Yggdrasil earlier stages of the game because they're still Royal Knights. Use the Purge to play this out for free, and then have the X antibody option slide it underneath. So then you can gain their abilities and their effects and basically rush. Omnimon X is just great for aggression. It's looking at your opponent's security, trashing something, picking something, and all that kind of stuff. You don't get the when Digivolving effect, so it's really about the when attacking effect instead. And then for Magnamon X antibody, it can help you stall out and be like protective for an entire turn. It can even recover itself if it ever gets in threat as well. So it's definitely really nice to have, and a very spicy sort of package right here with the whole X antibody option. Last but not least, I do want to suggest Odin's Breath right here, which is a 5-cost option. Now, when an effect trashes this card from the security, you get to activate its main effect. Its main effect basically minus 3000 DP on one of your opponent's Digimon until the end of the opponent's turn. Then, if there are 6 or fewer security total cards left in the security stack of both players, all of your opponent's Digimon gets minus security 1 blanket effect. The reason why I would suggest this option, even though it's yellow, is because you do play Marcus Damon, so you can fulfill the color requirements quite easily. And also, it does have a lot of synergy with Contorsmon specifically, so then you can have like some combos that can come in clutch for sure when you play those both cards together. Alright, that's it for all the cards I wanted to show you guys. Now let's teach you guys how to play this deck, how it all works, and all the combos, which actually varies and overall. Keep in mind, guys, this deck I personally feel is actually still really strong, and it definitely deserves to be in one of the top tier decks in the meta of the format, but it takes a lot of time and practice to understand, because every decision you make is very meaningful. For those who play security control and any Mega Zoo type of decks will know that every card you play every turn is super crucial to how you would eventually be playing later in the game. So anyways, of course, you always hatch your egg with King Yggdrasil. So immediately the moment you hatch it, you immediately get to hatch another one to sort of like slide it underneath right there. So that's how you're going to be building your stack. When it comes to finding pieces at the early stages of the game, what cards you want to look for your mulligan would ideally be your Magnamon, it would ideally be your Systemon Xiao, your Systemon Blanc, and Omekamon, and you definitely want to see Dynasmon as well, and also the Royal Knights of the Purge. You do want to see it at some point, therefore these are the copies that you play a lot of generally, so you want to mulligan and find these cards because they are your lower cost stuff, so you're not giving your opponents a lot of memory when you do play them in the early stages. Magnamon is a great card to play at the first turn or even the second, essentially, because immediately it just costs 2 to basically hard play with King Yggdrasil's effect right here, reducing it by 4 and 5, making it 2 like I mentioned. Next cards you want to be sort of like juggling between the memory gauges is the Systemon Blanc, Systemon Xiao, cycling and finding cards, and Omekamon is just always great, so they can slide in additional Royal Knights. It can just be whatever you want underneath when you potentially need to. Therefore, this is the card you always want to just use to chip away your opponent's security right away, and there's no need to think twice with it and just go ahead and attack it. So what happens next is during the start of your main phase, all of your Royal Knights will get sucked in underneath your Yggdrasil, and then you obviously put another one underneath, and this is what happens. And when Magnamon leaves the field, you get to draw one card, giving you the value. And you know, this deck doesn't have like super strong draw power, so any sort of like opportunities to help you cycle through more and find more pieces is just really crucial, because the more you find, the more versatile your plays can become. And then in the later stages of games, as you continue to add more Yggdrasils down the road, this is when you want to start playing your Royal Knights of the Purge for effectively only 3 memory, being able to draw more cards and then sliding more stuff underneath. So it's very important for you to sort of plan and know your opponent's matchups and have a good matchup knowledge to decide on what you want to be sliding underneath. That is because, like, with different matchups, there's different utility tools that you want to see different Digimon to help you, either control and remove the board or control the game pace to your, sort of favor. There are times, of course, you can chip away with your sister mons if you want to, and if you can. Otherwise, you can just leave them on the board as well, just really based on, again, the whole game state of how it progresses. Now, in the next kind of cards you want to be eventually playing is, of course, your Dynasmon, because you want to search and find more pieces. Dynasmon can grab you any 2 cards that are Royal Knights in their traits, meaning that you can even grab Royal Knights of the Purge as well, which is going to be ultra value, and so that you can play more multiples, and if you're able to play more of these, it is always great. And the mid-game strategy this is when you sort of like really why you need to know of what you slided underneath, and so that you can plan again to play what certain cards, because you want to utilize your Royal Knights of the Purge to play these guys during the mid-game by trashing it with its delay effect to play something back out. Now keep in mind, this is going to be super crucial because you don't get any on-play effects. Therefore, you want to slide stuff in that has sort of when attacking effects or sort of like floating kind of effects type of sort. Kentaurismon is great. Gallantmon is actually pretty great as well right here. This Gallantmon is absolutely perfect too. Omnimon is actually not too bad as well. Sometimes you do want to keep your Omnimon in your hand, but if you see multiple copies, you can definitely slide one in, so then you can definitely use the Purge to play any of these guys. So then you have a big body just to make a swing. But keep in mind, you don't get on-play effects right there. As we go with, let's just say with Gallantmon, we can utilize its when attacking effect to pop more things. With this one, I actually love having it in the mid stage of the game, just because it exerts so much pressure by trashing our opponent's security or deleting things with 6k or less and just swing with it. And then everything that gets played underneath from Yggdrasil gets sucked all the way back in later on, so you can continue to further reduce play costs and whatnot. Leopardmon is always a card that you do want to be seeing eventually, because it lets you play more things as you go, and being able to play more things, you can play Magnamon for a cost of 3 only. Otherwise, you can play other bigger Royal Knights, but you do have to pay a lot of memory, so keep in mind, don't play stuff with Leopardmon's effect that are just really big unless you really need to. But then you can also synergize with the Purge in terms of sequencing to play more things right here. And let's just say you play a O-Force right here, for example, and then you get to get its like all turns effects, everyone gets blocker and so on, and that's how you continue to gather your Royal Knights. Of course, you know, your board is never going to be as clogged up as like this, but as we continue, I wanted to actually explain more other utility cards that are just really great as we continue, because Gankumon is really fantastic, lets you play your Systemons back from trash for free if you need to, so you can cycle for more cards. Therefore, using them chip away and having them being deleted is totally fine. If not, otherwise, you do get to play something that's a Royal Knight, and you do get to utilize their on-play effects just like this. Now, of course, keep in mind, you cannot play an Omnimon, you cannot play Gankumon with Gankumon's effects, so be careful with that as well. But yeah, play anything you desire or you want to sort of control the board situation, and again, you know, chip away down your opponent's security, and setting them to around 3 or 4 is already good enough for lethal range, because eventually, like I mentioned, you want to be seeing your Omnimon in your hand, and having one under the stack is totally fine too, because once you racked up a lot of sources underneath Yggdrasil, and this is why it's super crucial on how you plan your Royal Knights and what you put under, eventually, you know, if you can be at 3 memory or 2 or whatnot, you can pay very little memory, let's just say effectively even for 1 when there's a lot of pieces, or even just 3 memory, delete the Yggdrasil and play all the different Royal Knights, and make sure they have different names. Now, depending on what you play, you do want to sequence and resolve all your on-play effects differently to make sure they all synergize and you get the most optimal value right here. With all the different Royal Knights you come out from here, you can actually just do a whole bunch of effects, board wipe your opponents, or clean them up, or even set up a super strong board that makes it very difficult for them to even answer, and then you just go for all the swings for next game, basically win the game just like that, which is really good. The other last final note and tip I do want to mention is, other than just sliding in Gallantmon underneath Yggdrasil in the breeding area earlier on, you can sometimes just play this first in the late stages of the game. Once again, let's just say you have 3 memory. Just because you had a Marcus, you know, sitting there, getting rid of those Floodgate rookies like I mentioned, you have to get rid of them when you do. As soon as you see one, you have to have that as your priority. Then you get to even play this Gallantmon, even just for 1 cost, depending on how many cards in both players' trashes, or even for free, just because there's a lot of cards in the trash eventually, and then you immediately get to rush and swing with it. Keep in mind, you have to have no Digimon on the board to do this, so if you ever had like rookies on the board earlier, use them to chip away and hope for them to get deleted, so then you can play this for very minimal cost. And then again, that's where you can follow up with the Omnimon play, again, deleting your Yggdrasil and playing all your different Royal Knights that are underneath it to go for the big plays. And once again, like I mentioned, sequencing is just super crucial, and that's how you want to play this deck and rush and swing and continue to delete things and control the board. And it's just an epic, super cool, fun deck, but also really strong deck, in my opinion. Now wrap up for the deck profile for today. If you guys enjoyed the video and found it helpful, please give it a like. If you have any suggestions, recommendations, or questions, be sure to share it with everyone in the comments down below. Once again, be sure to subscribe and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for more BT13 content. If you guys just can't wait and want to see early deck lists and first drafts, then once again, definitely join the Avault Club. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are. See you next video, and this is Avault, signing out.